Well, I'm deeply suspicious of this whole sort of monopolar obsession with cholesterol. The original research that got cholesterol on the map was done in 1913 by a Russian scientist called Anichov. And he fed rabbits cholesterol, and they got these blockages in their arteries and they died. And in those days they sort of said, well, these are sort of similar blockages. But they didn't work out that rabbits have no biochemistry for processing animal fats. If they'd chosen pigs, they would have seen nothing. So as a nutritionist, I've tracked all the studies feeding people lots of cholesterol, for example in eggs. And for the cholesterol hypothesis to be real, number one, eating cholesterol would raise your blood cholesterol. It doesn't. Number two, that eating those foods would lead to more heart attacks. It doesn't. So it sort of doesn't really add up. I mean, the body produces cholesterol. It's a totally normal substance. You make all sex hormones out of cholesterol. 25% of the body's cholesterol is in the brain. So the idea of stopping the brain producing cholesterol with a statin drug, which is what they do, really doesn't make any sense to me at all. And the actual scale of benefit of taking statins is very small, even though we've been sold it as a miracle drug. I mean, there is evidence that if you're a man and you've had a heart attack, taking statins will reduce your risk somewhat. But if you simply have, this new disease called hypercholesterolemia, in other words, you feel fine, but your cholesterol is above a magic number, then, taking statins, the evidence is not strong, especially for women. So I'm deeply suspicious about statins. I'm not at all surprised to find two things. One is that when a person's cholesterol is too low, for example, below 3.5, by the way, the current criteria is you're meant to have a cholesterol below 5.2. Actually, if you look at the research, up to 6 doesn't seem to confer extra risk. But once you get below 3.5, then all sorts of mental health problems and sexual dysfunction occur. And that's exactly what you'd expect, because cholesterol is vital for the brain and it's vital for making sex hormones. So the idea of putting someone who perhaps has had a heart attack but has low cholesterol onto statins, which further lower their cholesterol, very bad news. In America, statins have a warning about memory loss. So we know that there is this association between statins and significant cognitive dysfunction. However, the fact is, right now in Britain, there's a study about to start giving statins for secondary prevention, in other words, to people who aren't sick, in order to see if it will, reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. I think that this is not going to, bear any good fruit. And I spoke recently to a professor of cardiology and said, what do you think about statins? And he said, I hate them. And I said, why? And he said, well, because they actually stop people looking at the true underlying causes of disease. And that's the point. I think that what's happening, in the same way that now there's this blood test called cholesterol, which leads to the prescription of a statin to millions of people, very good model for making money. I think that what's happening right now is this focus on amyloid protein and tests for amyloid protein may be exploiting the same marketing model. In other words, we could be tested for maybe amyloid protein antigens, prove positive, you feel fine, and the next thing you know, you're on an amyloid protein inhibiting drug. What you really have to look at is why is the body producing amyloid protein? We know, for example, that faulty methylation will lead to that, and we know that faulty methylation is connected to insufficient B vitamins. So we have to go downstream and look at the factors. And the factors, of course, are going to involve diet, they're going to involve lifestyle, they may involve genetics, although only 1 in 100 cases of Alzheimer's is caused by genes. So we have to look at the true underlying causes and why it is that we have this prevalence of Alzheimer's now in the 21st century. It's not a disease that was, so common if you go back 50 years. There are some parts of the world, for example, at least, this is beginning to change, but in rural China was very, very rare. So whenever you have a disease that is found in some parts of the world and not in others, then you have to look at what is it that we are doing and others are not doing that's leading to this terrible condition.